Welcome to Breakthrough Action's video series on effective social and behavior change programming at the nexus of climate change and child, early, and forced marriage and unions. Throughout this video series, we'll refer to child, early, and forced marriage and unions using the acronym CEFMU. We'll refer to social and behavior change using the acronym SBC. This video series consists of 5 learning topics with video lessons structured around the findings from a recent literature review, examining the relationship between CEFMU and climate change. The aim of this video series is to help SBC practitioners deepen their understanding of the relationship between CEFMU and climate change, and to explore practical theories, frameworks, and approaches to support more holistic, iterative, and child-centered SBC programming at this nexus. The video series will explore the following topics. Topic 1, Introduction to CEFMU and Climate Change, followed by Topic 2, Advocate for CEFMU and Climate Change Integration in Policy and Program Design. Topic 3, Enhance Community SBC Capacity to foster social support for change and to shift harmful social and gender norms that drive CEFMU in the context of climate change. Followed by Topic 4, Improve parents and families' capacity in climate adaptation and their ability to prevent and respond to CEFMU. And lastly, Topic 5, Promote meaningful participation of children and youth in climate adaptation and CEFMU prevention and response. Let's go ahead and dive into Topic 1. Topic 1 consists of 2 video lessons. In these video lessons, we will explore key terms and definitions, the CEFMU and climate change nexus, as well as relevant theories, frameworks, and approaches to support systemic, child-centered SBC programming at the CEFMU and climate change nexus. In Topic 1, Video 1, we will discuss key terms and definitions and discuss the CEFMU and climate change nexus. Let's get started. Welcome to Topic 1, Introduction to CEFMU and Climate Change. As we begin to speak more in depth about the relationship between CEFMU and climate change, let's take some time to review some key definitions to make sure that we're all on the same page. Let's begin with child marriage. Child marriage is globally defined as a formal or informal union where one or both parties are under the age of 18. Next, let's look at early marriage. Early marriage is also used to describe a situation where at least one party is under 18, but the terminology focuses on how being under 18 compromises the ability to consent to marriage. Next, forced marriage. Forced marriage refers to a situation where at least one party does not provide full and informed consent, irrespective of age. It may also refer to a situation where at least one party is not able to leave or to end the marriage. And lastly, a nexus. A nexus is a connection or series of connections linking 2 or more things. Therefore, understanding the climate change and CEFMU nexus requires us to closely examine the dynamic relationships between elements of climate change and CEFMU, and to make sense of emerging patterns. The next definition that we'll explore is climate change. Climate change refers to long-term shifts in temperatures and weather patterns. Such shifts can be natural, due to changes in the sun's activity, or large volcanic eruptions. But since the 1800s, human activities have been the main driver of climate change, primarily due to the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas. The next definition we'll look at is mitigation. Mitigation refers to human interventions to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases by sources or enhance their removal from the atmosphere. And lastly, we'll look at adaptation. Adaptation refers to changes in processes, practices, and structures to moderate existing or potential damages or to benefit from opportunities associated with climate change. Now that we've reviewed key definitions related to CEFMU and climate change, let's begin to make sense of the CEFMU and climate change nexus by taking a closer look at the findings from Breakthrough Action's recent desk review on this topic. Climate change and CEFMU are both intricate issues. They involve many interconnected factors and stakeholders, each with their own perspectives and sometimes conflicting interests. By identifying how these elements interact, we can gain a better understanding of these complex dynamics. Through the literature review, we understand that climate change is a threat multiplier, which means it amplifies vulnerabilities, imbalances, and injustices, including gender inequality, already present in social systems. The review also highlighted a significant gap in evidence-based research on how climate change increases the risks of violence against children. As of 2024, it is estimated that 640 million girls and women worldwide were married in childhood. According to Girls Not Brides, 12 million girls under the age of 18 are married every year. Additionally, up to 280 million girls alive today are at risk of becoming child brides, and this number could rise to 320 million by 2050 if current trends continue. According to a 2023 report from Save the Children, the number of girls at extreme risk of facing the double blow of climate change and child marriage is set to increase 33% to nearly 40 million by 2050. Currently, an estimated 30 million adolescent girls live in the top 10 child marriage climate hotspot countries, which are the nations that carry the highest risks that a girl will be both married as a child and experience life-changing climate disasters. Yet, despite these unequal impacts on girls, less than 2% of national climate plans across the globe mention the needs and involvement of adolescents. The figure on the left side of the screen visualizes the climate change and CEFMU nexus in Ethiopia, India, Malawi, Mozambique, Nepal, and Uganda, which were countries of focus and Breakthrough Action's literature review. There are 4 key takeaways visualized in the figure. Number 1, climate change will continue to increase. Number 2, climate change has an amplifying effect. Number 3, in some contexts, school dropouts are increasing and CEFMU is expanding. And number 4, in some contexts, the climate change and CEFMU nexus has reduced community agency for climate change adaptation. Let's unpack these one by one. The first key takeaway that we'll discuss is climate change will continue to increase. In relation to climate change increasing, the literature review revealed that adverse impacts from human-caused climate change will continue to intensify. Also, global warming will continue to increase in the near term, and compound heat waves and droughts are projected to become more frequent, including concurrent events across multiple locations. The second key takeaway that we're going to discuss is climate change has an amplifying effect. In relation to climate change having an amplifying effect, the literature review revealed that climate change has the potential to exacerbate poverty, food insecurity, migration, and the sexual vulnerability of girls. The extent and nature of these impacts can differ significantly depending on the specific context. Also, girls and boys may be seen as free labor and can be used to help their families cope with reduced income and or loss of economic assets, such as land or cattle, due to climate change. Boys may be seen as a potential source of income through dowry payments, and perceived as more likely than girls to get a paid job. Girls can be perceived as, quote, commodities on the marriage market and as a source of income through bride price. In situations of poverty and food scarcity, girls are sometimes perceived as an economic burden on their families and may have less access to food than boys. In contexts in which girls have migrated to a new location due to conflict or climate disasters, girls often face heightened vulnerability to sexual aggression and unintended pregnancies. This increased risk can lead families to perceive these girls as potential threats to their reputation and social standing. Consequently, families may take measures they believe will protect their honor, which can sometimes result in further restrictions on the girls' freedoms and opportunities. The interplay of these factors underscores the complex and multifaceted nature of migration and its impact on girls' lives. Our literature review highlighted that the vulnerability of communities to the adverse effects of climate change, such as extreme weather events, food insecurity, and displacement, has the strongest impact on the prevalence of child marriage. Climate change significantly impacts child marriage, primarily by reducing household incomes. This economic strain exacerbates the main drivers of child marriage, gender discrimination, and extreme poverty. Among these, in some contexts, gender discrimination can play a more crucial role than extreme poverty. As families face financial hardships due to climate-related disruptions, they may prioritize marrying off daughters early to alleviate economic burdens and adhere to societal norms that undervalue girls' education and autonomy. This dynamic highlights the intertwined nature of environmental and social issues, emphasizing the need for comprehensive strategies to address both climate change and gender inequality. The third takeaway that we're going to discuss is that in some contexts, school dropouts are rising and CEFMU are expanding. The literature review revealed the following. In the context of climate change, cultural values placed on girls and boys can exacerbate school dropouts and promote practices of CEFMU. In some cultures, boys are traditionally expected to assume the role of the primary household provider, while girls are often tasked with domestic responsibilities and caregiving duties. When families face limited resources and cannot afford to educate all of their children, they frequently prioritize the education of boys over girls. This prioritization stems from the belief that investing in boys' education will yield greater economic returns for the family in the future. As a result, girls are often deprived of educational opportunities, which perpetuates gender inequality and limits their potential for personal and professional development. These practices are often driven by economic incentives, such as the bride price or the reduced dowry required for younger girls, as well as by social norms that emphasize family honor and the readiness of boys to marry. Research indicates that school dropouts and CEFMU are mutually reinforcing. Dropping out of school increases the likelihood of CEFMU, and CEFMU in turn hinders educational attainment. This creates a vicious cycle where the lack of education and the prevalence of CEFMU feed into each other, perpetuating gender inequality and limiting opportunities for young people. The fourth takeaway that we're going to discuss is that in some contexts, the CEFMU climate change nexus has reduced community agency for climate change adaptation. The literature review revealed the following. The feedback loop of increasing school dropouts and expanding CEFMU has significant consequences for children. Firstly, it can prevent them from gaining essential knowledge about the impacts of climate change, which is crucial for understanding and supporting their families and communities in recognizing and managing climate-related risks. Without this education, children can be less equipped to contribute to their community's awareness and preparedness for climate challenges. Secondly, this feedback loop of increasing school dropouts and expanding CEFMU can hinder the development of vital skills needed for climate change adaptation. Education plays a critical role in equipping children with the tools and knowledge to implement strategies that can reduce the adverse effects of climate change and adapt to its impacts. When children drop out of school and are subjected to CEFMU, they can miss out on these learning opportunities, which can limit their ability to contribute to sustainable solutions and resilience building efforts in their communities. As you can see from the literature review findings, as climate change continues to increase, its impact on CEFMU worsens. The climate change and CEFMU nexus can be framed as a, quote, wicked problem, where attempting to solve isolated problems may lead to unintended consequences, making the whole situation worse. Embracing complexity is important for effective action to improve such situations. As such, the inherent complexity of this dynamic nexus requires SBC programmers focused on climate adaptation and CEFMU prevention and response to abandon linear, overly reductive thinking and to prioritize holistic, iterative, and differentiated approaches to facilitate effective and more systemic SBC program design. In the next video lesson, we'll take a bird's eye view at theories, frameworks, and approaches identified through the literature review to support this type of holistic and systemic SBC design. Welcome to video 2 of topic 1, Introduction to CEFMU and Climate Change. In video 1, we discussed the climate change and CEFMU nexus and explored relevant definitions and concepts. In this video, video 2, we'll turn our attention to concepts, frameworks, and approaches identified through the literature review to support holistic, systemic SBC program design for complex and dynamic problematic situations like the climate change and CEFMU nexus. The first concept that we'll cover in this video is systems thinking. Systems thinking is a way to approach complex issues by looking at them as systems. Rather than considering only how to solve an immediate problem, for instance, child marriage or climate change, you consider how all of the pieces connect to make the whole. It is for this reason that the climate change and CEFMU nexus is framed as a complex and dynamic system. An iceberg metaphor is often used to describe what systems thinking is. With an iceberg, there's what we see above the water and the much bigger unseen portion underwater. Systems thinking positions SBC programmers to engage in more holistic analysis of complex problems or systems, like the climate change and CEFMU nexus, and consider its interconnectedness and interdependencies, not just its isolated components. There are additional resources on systems thinking available in the description below this video. At the time that the literature review was conducted, Breakthrough Action was unable to identify any framework, approach, or toolkit that seamlessly integrated SBC, climate change adaptation, and CEFMU prevention and response programming. The available frameworks identified were siloed, such as SBC for climate change adaptation, SBC for ending violence against children, and SBC for CEFMU prevention and response. In this video, we'll take a closer look at the World Health Organization's 2016 Inspire framework of 7 strategies for ending violence against children and adolescents, enriched with Barn Fonden's 4 actions to keep children safe in climate-affected communities. We will then showcase an adapted version of this framework that has been enriched with insights from Breakthrough Actions literature review and specifically tailored to support systemic SBC programming at the nexus of climate change and CEFMU. First, let's take a closer look at the INSPIRE framework. The 7 strategies of the INSPIRE framework are designed to work together to create a comprehensive approach to preventing and responding to violence against children. The strategies are as follows. First, implementation and enforcement of laws. This strategy focuses on creating and enforcing laws that protect children from violence, such as laws against child labor, child marriage, and corporal punishment. Next, norms and values. This strategy involves changing cultural and social norms that support violence against children. It includes promoting gender equality and nonviolent conflict resolution. Third, safe environments. This strategy aims to create safe physical and social environments for children by reducing violence in schools, communities, and online spaces. The fourth strategy is parent and caregiver support. Providing support and education to parents and caregivers to promote positive parenting practices and reduce harsh parenting, defined as involving coercive acts and negative emotional expressions by parents towards their children. The fifth strategy is income and economic strengthening. This involves improving the economic conditions of families, especially those with girls, recognizing the particular vulnerabilities that they face through measures like cash transfers, microfinance, and employment opportunities to reduce the stress and risk factors associated with violence. The sixth strategy that we're going to look at is response and support services, ensuring that children who experience violence have access to effective and timely support services, including health care, counseling, and legal assistance. And the seventh strategy of the INSPIRE framework, education and life skills, promoting education and life skills training for children to empower them and reduce their vulnerability to violence. This includes school-based programs that teach children about their rights and how to protect themselves. Now that we've had a chance to take a look at the World Health Organization's INSPIRE framework, let's discuss the Barn-Fonden framework, strategies to end violence against children in a changing climate. There are 4 actions we can take now to keep children safe in climate-affected communities. Barn-Fonden sees the need to enhance the World Health Organization's INSPIRE strategy approaches to include these 4 actions to end violence against children. The first action, acknowledge that climate change is increasing levels of violence against children and continue to strengthen and test the evidence. Second action, strengthen prevention of violence against children through livelihood resilience, address social norms, and develop school-based programs. The third action recommended by Barn-Fonden is to strengthen disaster prevention and response services to incorporate the increasing risk of violence against children and promote anticipatory action. And the fourth action, identified by Barn-Fonden, is listen to, engage, and support children and youth in planning and solution finding to deal with the effects of a changing climate. Now that we've taken a look at the World Health Organization's INSPIRE framework with Barn-Fonden's cross-cutting actions to keep children safe in climate-affected communities, let's explore how this model has been further adapted and enhanced by Breakthrough Action for systemic social and behavior change programming at the nexus of climate change and CEFMU. Breakthrough Action has further adapted and enriched the Barn-Fonden actions with key insights from the literature review to help social and behavior change practitioners more effectively design and implement holistic, systemic, child and youth-centered programs in the context of climate change and CEFMU. The 4 adapted actions specific to the CEFMU and climate change nexus are meant to be seamlessly integrated with the World Health Organization's INSPIRE framework that we previously reviewed. The adapted actions are as follows. Adapted action number 1, advocate for CEFMU and climate change integration in policy and program design. Adapted action number 2, enhance community social and behavior change capacity to foster social support for change and to shift harmful social and gender norms that drive CEFMU in the context of climate change. Third adapted action, improve parents and families' capacity in climate adaptation and their ability to prevent and respond to CEFMU. And the fourth and final adapted action, promote meaningful participation of children and youth in climate adaptation and CEFMU prevention and response. In the subsequent topics of this video series, we will continue to discuss and unpack these 4 adapted actions for SBC programmers working at the nexus of climate change and CEFMU. To conclude this topic, let's pause and reflect on some key takeaways from the video lessons in Topic 1. The adverse effects of climate change are projected to intensify over time, exacerbating existing social inequalities and reinforcing cultural norms that contribute to CEFMU. As climate change progresses, it disproportionately affects vulnerable populations, particularly in regions where gender disparities are already pronounced. This exacerbation of inequalities can lead to increased economic hardship, food insecurity, and displacement, all of which heighten the risk of CEFMU. As of 2024, it is estimated that 640 million girls and women worldwide were married in childhood. 12 million girls under the age of 18 are married every year. Additionally, up to 280 million girls alive today are at risk of becoming child brides, and this number could rise to 320 million by 2050 if current trends continue. The climate change and CEFMU nexus is a complex and dynamic system. There is a lack of knowledge and research on the CEFMU climate change nexus. Current CEFMU prevention and response and climate change adaptation efforts are far too siloed. We also found in the literature review that CEFMU is largely absent from climate change policies. Furthermore, effective SBC programming at the nexus of climate change and CEFMU requires holistic, nonlinear thinking to address the problem's interconnectedness and interdependencies, not just its isolated components. Lastly, Breakthrough Action has further adapted and enhanced the Barn-Fonden actions linked to the World Health Organization's INSPIRE framework with insights from the literature review to create a system of 4 interacting actions specific to SBC programming at the CEFMU and climate change nexus. Thank you for watching these video lessons for an introduction to climate change and child, early, and forced marriage and unions. Please have a look at the resources that have been made available to you in the description below this video. For the next topic, we'll explore advocacy for CEFMU and climate change integration in policy and program design.